Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm going to do this before I get reminded. I tried to find a way to do this permanently, wasn't able to, but let's turn the ads off on YouTube. There we go. Okay, that's a little better. I hope everybody's doing well. I just nearly had a brain aneurysm. Although having had a bit of a brain problem, I probably shouldn't joke about that. Hang one second. Now, I was on Facebook, and my brother, who's a good deal younger than me, who's started out as a liberal and has now pretty much gone off the deep end pretty nearly completely, had a post there, and I just lost my mind, man. It's really absolutely incredible to me how these Democrats are able to justify the amount of smug superiority that they manage to project on top of everybody else, when in point of fact, I don't think there is a less democratic organization in the history of the country than the Democratic Party. And I just opened up on both barrels. He was talking about the basically saying that that Republicans were not patriots, were just followers because Donald Trump is a king. And I just uncorked with the oh, okay, well, let's talk about the history of the Democratic Party, and I just went back. Civil War was the Democratic Party leaving the United States of America in rebellion. The Democratic Party voted for a candidate in 1864 against Lincoln, who said, "We'll just call the whole Civil War a big mistake. Come on back with your slaves." The KKK were Democrats. The Jim Crow laws were Democrats. All of the governors turning fire hoses on those black girls trying to go to schools were Democrats. It was Lyndon Johnson who said, "I'm going to have those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years," and he didn't say N-word, by making them dependent on the government and ruining three generations of people's lives now, and on and on and on and on and on. I said, you had a president who basically committed treason against the country in order to sabotage his successor. You had a fraudulent election in 2020 where you elected a mannequin who didn't know what day of the week it was, who was governing the country through auto pens and never asked a single question about who was authorizing those auto pens. You ran a candidate in 2024 who didn't get a single vote in the primaries from the Democratic Party, people who are the most anti-democratic. I just went off and off and off, and honestly, I am just not putting up with it anymore. Just after that, because their accounts are kind of linked, they have this sort of thing, and I saw my cousin, who's a multimillionaire, basically saying Donald Trump has opened up Anwar for drilling. It's just disgusting. And 4 or 5 other millionaire liberals in there saying, yes, everything he touches, he's destroyed. It's unbelievable. He ruins everything. Yeah, there's nothing like a bunch of rich white millionaires congratulating each other on keeping energy costs high for people who aren't millionaires. I just don't. I don't remember being this angry about this, because it's personal for me. And I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a SpaceX launch in 8 minutes apparently, which is visible right outside this window. But I'm in the happy position of being bored with watching SpaceX orbital launches. Anyway, there's that. Darth Chuck the Merciless wants to know how Natasha's wrist is doing. No, Bill, I haven't gone to. Damien Cavendish says, sounds like Thanksgiving with Bill's going to be a hoot this year. I stopped going 9 years ago. My wife has never seen that side of my family because I went 2-3 years in a row, and I kept my mouth shut and I didn't talk politics. But they cannot let it go. They cannot. They have to just keep poking you with a stick until they finally put me in a position where it's like, well, I have 3 choices. I can just nod and shut up and agree with them, or I can draw my pistols, and I do this for a living, so I can just gun them down, or I can just not go anymore, and that's what I chose to do. So, but the just the certainty, the smug certainty, and I don't know. It's just unbelievable. Yes, Roadrunner says I need to say rhetorical pistols. When I say draw my pistols, I don't have pistols. And I don't have a holster either. So if you can't figure out that's rhetorical, then you probably, probably have a cognitive problem. Can't help you with. I'm not talking about you, Roadrunner. I get where you're going for that. Yeah. I know I'm not going to do what I did last time, where I had something for a Monday night and ended up spending 45 minutes on it. But I did have some rendering time free while something else was working, and so I got something to show you tonight. It's only 3.5 minutes, and I'm just going to show it, and then we'll move on. I'll get to that in a minute. What the heck was I going to say? I saw something that was really interesting. It gave me a lot of insight, and I sent an initial letter to our Gen Z study group, and I had a couple new members that I haven't talked to yet. Just a couple extra people come in. But I saw something online that was really interesting. It was from a Gen Zer, young man, and he was talking about Jordan Peterson, and the title of the piece was why I think it was why the Groypers have turned against Jordan Peterson, and it was very, very well argued, and I learned a lot about Gen Z on this. But basically, what the guy was saying was that he, like so many other young men his age, first got turned on to Jordan Peterson, 5 years ago, and were just blown away by his message of stoicism, of being comfortable with life not being fair, of hard work, making your bed, dealing with adversity like a man, standing up even if you're alone to the things that you believe in. The condemnation of this lewdness and lasciviousness, I guess, whatever the hell word it is, all of that, and that message had resonated with this guy so much, and so many millions of other young men, and then basically Jordan Peterson just completely sold out, and lasciviousness, just basically completely collapsed and sold out. And he led the whole thing step by step. And I don't have anything. Certainly don't have anything against Jordan Peterson. I don't have anything particularly for Jordan Peterson, but he certainly does seem to have changed quite a lot. This was the take that the young man had on his video, right around the time he signed up with Daily Wire, he started becoming like a fashion plate, and and got more and more kind of prickly. Uh, Marisha asked if he's in poor health. Yes, he's in very poor health, and I think his daughter made a post saying he's basically going to be out for a year or something. But this guy just went on to say that that everything that Jordan Peterson had claimed to stand for, he basically just backed out on. I know he had I saw a bit of his performance. I cannot. I do not know why I cannot remember the name of that. What's a podcast where everybody, it's 20 people versus one. But I saw I saw clips of Jordan Peterson on that, and he was really in bad shape. But this isn't really so much about Jordan Peterson. Jubilee, thanks. It's about what this young man was saying, and about how he felt, and he felt betrayed. He basically felt like Jordan Peterson was a father figure to him, and that and was that way for a bunch of young men, and he basically went back on all of his principles. He talked about having a family that's virtuous and chaste, and his daughter ran off to see Andrew Tate, and it's all just it was pretty damning. But again, it's not about Jordan Peterson, who's as human as anybody else. It's just that sense of betrayal from this Gen Zer was just so palpable throughout the whole thing. It was about a 25-minute video. And so it's so brokenhearted, and he just came out and said this is why a lot of people are turning to guys like Nick Fuentes, because Fuentes kind of stands his ground and basically just screams out in the hurricane and dares it to rain on him. It's a really complex issue. Well, it's not actually. It's really a simple issue, but there's a real vacuum there. There's a real vacuum, real cultural, political vacuum there, and I don't know what to say about it other than somebody needs to step into that space, and I'd like to be a part of that. Somebody mentioned earlier today that Candace Owens had basically said, I saw the clip. Did JP join the Daily Wire? Bear 48 says JP. Jordan Peterson. Sorry. I was thinking about JP, the long-haired hippie guy who's really become really great. West of Eden says, "I'd still like to meet Clint Eastwood if he could. You wouldn't be disappointed with Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is exactly who he appears to be, and Gary Sinise is even more so." Candace basically said that the signature of a Fed hit is when they name buildings or streets after you, and they're naming a street after Charlie or something. And she pointed out it's always in the lowest rundown neck of the woods. And I saw a transcript, didn't see the whole thing. I saw a transcript of what she said, and she is just, I mean, honest to God, it seems to me to be such an obvious grift, but there are people who just, are just convinced that she's doing this completely out of altruism, and 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 is the only person who cares enough about Charlie to launch her own independent investigation, which started out with exploding, lavaliers, and then went to a second shooter who fired at the exact same millisecond as the first shooter, and went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then I don't know what the current state is. I'm sure Charlie will appear to her in a dream again, and clue her in. But from the first moment that she started running these pictures of her with Charlie and showing him dancing, we used to be friends. I actually not interviewed, I did a segment with Candace when she first got discovered, and they clearly were very close. But when I saw this, it just seemed so obvious to me that this person is not only just going for the clicks, and her audience is tripled or quadrupled since Charlie was killed, but she seems so obviously to me to be just maneuvering to just take over that organization, just kind of almost bully her way into it. And I really don't I don't like it. I don't like any of this stuff. And in the vacuum, people are going to this blame everything on Israel deal really fast. Now, I've never really openly spoken about it, but I'm happy to do it now. I support Israel. I think Israel's an important ally. I don't think that Israel should be free of criticism, and I don't think that any criticism of Israel or American Jews, for that matter, is anti-Semitism. This idea that you can't talk about these things, or that this is the sacred cow that no one can touch is, I don't know, man. It seems to me that there's an awful lot of people criticizing Israel who are saying that no one can criticize Israel, and so I just have a real clear idea about moral right and wrong, and I have a decent historical background too. And then you get things like Ben Shapiro saying that the only reason that his primary reason for supporting the United States is that it's a guarantor of Israel. I mean, you'd never hear me say that about this country. I'm half British. You never hear me say my main reason for being proud of being an American is because we, part of NATO. So there's all this stuff out there, and there are legitimate criticisms, and there are legitimate questions, and all of this. But this idea that that these as if TPUSA were composed only of Jewish donors. But let's take one of these big Jewish donors. This guy is not a Jewish donor. He's an American patriot. He has funded, really in almost like a startup level, TPUSA, Project Veritas, all of these pro-American things. This idea that these guys who are putting millions or tens of millions of dollars of patriotic American Jews who are trying to make some kind of counterweight to the $50 billion or whatever, $80 billion that just George Soros alone puts into it. It's like you really need to examine your belief system if you can't see that one of these rich Jews is a patriot and the other rich Jew is an anti-American, evil nihilist. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of people getting mileage out of this, and I don't find it at all appealing. I find it really pretty revolting. Does that mean I'm in the American Israel pocket? I don't think I am. I don't consider criticism of Israel to be off limits. And I know that I know, and I don't think you can say this for Tucker or Candace. I mean, I'm just looking at it from kind of the outside, but also a little bit from the inside. There are people out there hear me say this and they just say, okay, sure thing. But most of you out there who are fans, have been around for a long time, know this not about me, or not just about me, but about yourselves as well. And speaking for yourself, I think you know as much as I do that there's no amount of money that somebody can pay you to speak out against or try and influence or in any way carry water for a viewpoint that you don't agree with. You know, you can't pay me enough money to. There's not a check you can write because this business. Oh, really? Well, you wouldn't do it for $1,000,000? No, I wouldn't do it for $1,000,000. Well, you would do it for $1 billion? No, if I wouldn't do it for $1 million, I wouldn't do it for $1 billion. If I wouldn't do it for $1 billion, I wouldn't do it for $100. It's like people have principles, and I think this is what this guy was trying to say about Jordan Peterson, is that he seems like he sold out his principles. Asa Effendi says, I'm an American Jew with Israeli roots, and at this rate, I'm going to be politically homeless in a few short years. I can't support the anti-American, anti-West, anti-Israel left. I can't support the woke Reich. And if the woke Reich takes over the party, who in the hell am I supposed to support? I'm with you on this, Asa Effendi, but they're not going to take over the party. They're not. Fuentes is a really interesting guy. I've seen a good bit about him. And the kid has talent. There's no question he's got talent, and there's no question he's got a bombastic sort of social courage that I think comes from. I don't think this comes from a principled stand and the sort of stoic belief that this is what I believe is right, no matter what the world says. I think Fuentes is getting a lot of clout on taking this position, but he's just wrong, and watching him, some part of me that is been in the theater department since these 50 years or so nearly. Some part of me gets the feeling that this is a role that he's performing. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of stoic, grounded, impartial, fair, rock of masculine stability that people seem to think he is. I'm a big believer in the 11th commandment, which I've just been breaking for the last half hour. But this has got to be dealt with. Speaker Steve 9586 says, what does Nick say that anyone disagrees with? Well, unless I've misheard him, he said 9/11 was an Israeli operation several times. I honestly judge Candace and Tucker not more than not so much by what they say about Israel, but by the fact that they deny the moon landing. And you may say, and there's some truth to this. Well, Bill, this is your wheelhouse. This is your identity. You're Apollo space kid. This is your issue. And sure enough, it is. But honestly, it also, I think, says an awful lot about somebody's unwillingness to abandon reason and evidence in order to believe things that give them either clout or money or a sense of emotional satisfaction. So my point is, if you like Candace and Tucker believe the moon landing was fake, then you are willing to destroy it. You're willing to overlook an overwhelming amount of evidence in order to believe the worst about America. And that's what these conservatives are doing. They're believing the worst about America. They say that 9/11 was an inside job. In other words, our government was willing to kill. We killed 3,000 people on 9. They killed 3,000, meaning the Muslim attackers killed 3,000 people on 9/11. But it was going to be 30,000. That's the number they were looking for. And so to believe that your government could do that is pretty messed up. Now, of course, you have to balance that with the fact that that the government did lie about COVID. The government did lie about the 2020 elections. And I understand why people would get to the point where they cannot believe anything the government says, but this is the inability to weigh evidence. And really it comes down to, honestly, the root cause of all of this stuff is the absolute abandonment of education in the United States of America. Absolute abandonment of education. If you don't have a fundamental understanding of certain things, then you'll believe anything. If you don't understand the basics of physics, you can believe in the flat earth. If you don't understand the nature of humanity, and if you can't tell the difference between a mystery action movie and real life, then you've got some problems. Let me see here. Ace Fendi says, Bill Love created monsters that ran unchecked for years. These monsters are roaming the countryside. They do everything from governing to reporting to educating to committing violence. And the right, in our successful attempt to build a broad coalition, has also created some monsters. And we'll either have to deal with them now or we'll have to reckon with them later. Yes, it's time. Right at the moment of our success, right? This is what we get. Chris Elisar over in YouTube says it's an insurance job. I don't know if you're talking about, because I have to glance over there at the comments. I don't get to just sit there and read them. But I don't know if you're referring to 9/11. One of the theories about 9/11 was that it was essentially, he is talking about 9/11. That was an insurance job. Okay. This is, I remember talking to somebody about 9/11 just a couple months ago, and they said the whole thing was Bush and Cheney. Bush and Cheney wanted to go to war in the Middle East. Forget about the Israel angle. They just wanted to go to war. Cheney was going to make money off of his oil company and Halliburton and all the rest of it. And I said, okay, let's just pretend for a minute that somebody could be that evil. Let's just pretend. What about the people who flew the planes? Well, they were government agents. What about all the people who launched the missile against the Pentagon? And what about all the people that had to be killed and removed from the airplanes and all the rest? Yeah, they're all government agents. So what did the government agents get for this? What is their motivation? Their motivation, they're doing this so that Dick Cheney can make money? That's their motivation? You got thousands of people involved in this conspiracy, and all of them are doing it so that Dick Cheney can make money? Does that sound right to you? I'm going to risk my life and mass murder charges and all of this because I want Dick Cheney to make more money? What's the motivation of the people who made the event happen? Because for me, it's pretty clear that the motivation of the people that made the event happen is that they are absolutely convinced, and have been from birth, that to die in jihad is to get them rewards in heaven that they're not allowed to have on earth. And that makes crystal clear sense to me. Eric says, what did the person say to that? They said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you better know, because this is the thing about this. You guys have all these alternate theories of things that actually happened. And one of I just really need to keep this in mind. One of the most telling things about a conspiracy, a speculative hypothesis being false, is that there are 40 different explanations for what happened. There's 40 different explanations for who assassinated John Kennedy. There's 40 different explanations for what UFOs are. There's 40 different explanations for who did 9/11. But there's only one explanation for all of these things if you are on the side of the evidence. People who know who committed 9/11 don't have competing theories about it. You don't need any competing theories. This has always fascinated me, how these people don't seem to see that. Let's take the Kennedy thing. It's far enough away so that it doesn't carry quite the same emotional baggage. Why is it that the people who believe that John Kennedy was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone can explain everything concisely and everybody agrees on it to the letter? But why is it that the people that deny this have, in the case of the Kennedy assassination, I don't remember what the total number of suspects was, but somebody wrote it down or recorded it once. It's like 79 different suspects. Doesn't that tell you something? Yeah, Isapindi again says, does anyone else think that collapsing 2 giant skyscrapers, ruining an entire section of a city, killing thousands of civilians and dozens of first responders, traumatizing a nation, crashing an economy, and plunging the world into a series of wars, all in order to supposedly collect insurance for the buildings, is a ridiculous crackpot level plan and not even a brain damaged ne'er do well brother of a Bond villain would conceive of this as a preposterous conspiracy theory? Yes. What if you own the World Trade Center and you are trying to get rid of it for the insurance money? What is your risk reward calculation, right? What is your risk reward calculation? You have to have some kind of this. I got to just jump on this. Mary's Zaban says, has anyone explained Building 7? Yes, Building 7 is actually very easily explained. I'll tell you what's Mary about. I'm sorry, it's not Mary. It's Zaban. I'll tell you why Building 7 has such magnetic power for people who can't believe what they saw with their own eyes. And that is because the front of Building 7 is immaculate. The front of Building 7, the part that you saw the whole time, the part that you see during the collapse, doesn't have a mark on it. But you look at the back of Building 7, and it is gutted. And you look at Building 6, 5, 4, and 3, and they are gutted too. So, Alex Super says, insurance isn't the question, caused us belly to launch war. The surveillance state with the Patriot Act, these are the questions. How perfectly does this have to go? This plan to knock down 2 skyscrapers, hit the Pentagon and the Capitol building. How perfectly does this plan have to go so that there's no leaks? Alex Super says he's not with me on 9/11 here. Well, whatever your pet theory for why this was done, other than an attack on America, which is pretty clear, whatever motive you want to assign to it, what is the risk-reward calculation? Hundreds of people have to be involved in this. Hundreds. So, what do the hundreds of people get versus what happens if one piece of this thing goes wrong? I don't understand it. And the problem is that you have people who say, well, I don't have to explain why, I just don't believe it happened. You do have to explain why. When you've got something like 9/11, you have hundreds of thousands of moving pieces. Who was where, when, what was found in the wreckage, hundreds of thousands. And you have to have a theory that is more coherent than the one that we all saw happening on the day and that nobody doubted at all. I'm just curious. Washburn Billy says control is your answer. When you get the Patriot Act, you get a pretext to launch an invasion of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. What do we get for the invasion of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya? What do we get from it? Let's just assume for a minute that that this is true, what's the reward? Did we come out of Iraq with more money than we spent on it? Are we on the oil fields now? What did we get from it? We get nothing. The military industrial complex and New World Order get more money and control. How many people do you know, Marusha, that are in the military industrial complex? Because I know a significant number of people who are in the military industrial complex. I would say I know at least 10 people who are either are or at one time have been highly placed in national security and defense private sector stuff. So this idea that this is just an unrealistic idea of how people function and how they, and what their motivation is. I just don't get it. I absolutely don't get it. Now you can say that the invasion of Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11 in terms of that, and that's certainly an argument to be had. But to say that we did this so that we could go into Iraq, for what? For what? I don't. I just. I'll never understand it. I just don't understand it. Darth Trek the Merciless says, "Military, are you nuts?" B-Fire is on the absolute target, and I'm telling you, this is the answer, not just to 9/11, to all of it. It is absolutely true, and this is the point I'm going to close with. B-Fire got it exactly. People think that real life is like the movies, and now we are now on the absolute main point. We have been absolutely socialized. Washburn Billy says he's here in peace. I'm certainly not arguing with you, dude. I'm happy to have this discussion. I'm all about open discussions. I don't want anybody bullying you. It's not like you can't talk about this. It's not like you're banned. I'm happy to talk about this, have an open discussion all day. But I want to come back to this. We have been raised from the beginning of our lives. From the beginning of our lives. I got to just answer this. Milanjano says, so that Cheney could make money. What does Cheney need more money for? What does he need more money for? So when Eisenhower and Tulsi and people like that warn us about the military-industrial complex, are they just senile? No, Marusha, they're not senile. They're saying that they have undue political influence, but they're not saying that they're willing to murder 3,000 people in order to get a contract. That's just nuts. It goes way before Oliver Stone's JFK. Listen, if you grew up on movies in the 40s, okay, you had a view of America that you could pretty much summarize by It's a Wonderful Life. The American people are fundamentally good, and there are some bad actors out there, no question. But the goodness of the people will eventually win. But they didn't make twist movies back then, you know. I remember Citizen Kane. At the end of Citizen Kane, you discover what Rosebud is. But that doesn't change the plot. It doesn't change the course of Kane's life. It just explains it. But since we have been kids, we have been raised on movies where there's a twist, where the obvious solution is wrong, because writers like to write mysteries. And so they will construct a movie that shows you this is the logical step, logical. That's the logical conclusion. That's obviously what happened. No, it wasn't that. It turns out that it was the general who was on our side who was really doing it because he works for China, or it was this because of this, or it was white people who wanted to nuke Fort Knox to increase the value of the Krugerrand, or whatever. And so there's just this endless series of movies, and plus you throw in all the television shows and the CSI and all the murder mysteries and all this stuff, where the obvious answer is set up again and again and again and again and again to make an audience think this is the thing, and then at the end you get the reversal, and you go, ooh. And I lived this. I was a foreman on a jury. That was 2008 or 9. Simple case. This one woman went up while her boyfriend was being arrested and started trying to pull the police officer off of her, off of her boyfriend, and the defense said, the defense's position was, look, she's a tiny little girl. She's only 120 pounds. You're telling me that she was able to pull a grown policeman off of the suspect? She was pulling at him. It didn't have any effect on him. And I said, the defense attorney has just admitted that she assaulted this officer, and the defense attorney has just admitted that your client is guilty. This is a no-brainer, man. There's nothing here. And then 4 or 5 of those jurors said, I don't believe the policeman. Why not? Well, because it's too obvious. It can't be true. It's too obvious. It's too clear cut. There's got to be an angle. So, okay. I'll take this one too. Dr. Dre over here says Operation Northwoods was not a movie. It was a real suggestion for the greater good. Yes, it's a suggestion. It's a suggestion. We have plans to invade Great Britain. We have military plans to invade Canada. We have military plans to do all of these things. And that doesn't mean that it happened. Washburn Billy says, Control, Bill, you're not hearing. Just wait until you're not able to send a paper dollar. This is way bigger than you think. And again, I'm not trolling anyone here. I know you're not trolling anyone here. But this idea that people have this kind of power to make thousands and thousands of people complicit in mass murder. People don't work that way. Watergate was limited to 4 or 5, 6 people, and it leaked. Honestly, I really find it, Marusha says, Bill, you asked, what does Cheney need more money for? What do Pelosi, Biden, Putin, Saddam, etc. need more money for? Are Republicans immune from corruption and greed? No, we're not immune from corruption and greed, Marusha. We just don't murder 3,000 fucking people in order to get it. Can you not see the difference here? Good God. Good God. I'm changing the subject. I really am changing the subject. If you can't tell the difference between those two things, then there's something really wrong with you. All right. Well, I think I'll save my little video surprise for Monday, or maybe I'll do it later. But I got off on the wrong foot today with this, and I'm out of patience with it. I'm not saying we can't discuss it. Well, we can discuss it later. But to say that that's just barking mad. No, Washburn Billy, you didn't upset me. The situation upset me. Yeah, I'll show them to you, I'll run them in a second here. Let me just read the rules here. Thank you, Eric, for collating these questions here. Let me just see what we got. We got a capital G Geek. We got an Eli Noor. We got Eric Blake, Marusha Dark, capital G Geek, and a Roadrunner. We can get through these easily. Jake Bobrinth says, hi, Bill, hope you're having a great night. He must have just arrived. No, it's been a turbulent evening. I'll do the questions and I'll roll that video. How about that? Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Unity on the right after Charlie Kirk's assassination has faded. Yes, that's one of the things that Candace has done, has made it not be about the progressive left and their murderous rage, and the murderous rage that accompanies a lot of people with this transgender mental illness and their violence. Not about that anymore. Thank you, Candace. It's about, it's not about the left anymore. It's about Candace now. Back to the question. Unity on the right after Charlie Kirk's assassination has faded, partly because of Candace and company blaming the Jews, and partly by the milquetoast rhinos wanting to go back into politely losing. The loss of momentum reminds me of what happened after 9/11. The religion of peace mantra took over, yep, and any political capital was used to pass the Big Brother Patriot Act. Is there anything we can do next time to keep up the momentum? We'll find out about this time. I haven't given up on this time. But in any event, you're absolutely right about that. As for Europe, I don't worry about the Irish as they have a recent history of low-level domestic conflict. I'm more concerned with them turning hard communist. There are examples of the French fighting back. I haven't seen them, but they're not well publicized. Here are some recent examples. Farmers sprayed gypsies with manure to evict them from the fields. Saw that. French hairdresser shot and killed Tunisian man, quoted saying, "Grow a pair, go find out where they are." Okay. Pig heads found at 9 mosques in France. That is pretty passive, aggressive kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, there's resistance in Italy. I'll get to Italy in a second. In Ireland, there's resistance on the streets of Britain. Germany's not doing much. France is doing nothing. Italy, of all countries, is stepping up, and their new prime minister is freaking awesome. Well, good to hear real good ideas. He just went to break up, and he said the breakup went shockingly well. So that's a rough day. Sorry to hear that, brother, but good luck. Anyway, yeah, I'm glad it went well. Those aren't any fun at all. So this is another thing, that this whole kind of Israel's behind everything kind of thing. Israel is not marching in the streets of Dearborn demanding people convert to kosher laws. That is Islam that is doing that. And this is what you get when you look away from the evidence. You not only implicate people who are not guilty, or certainly at least not guilty of the level of things that they've been accused of, but you also conveniently forgive and forget the actual perpetrators. So anybody who says that 9/11 was anything other than a Muslim attack on the country is essentially letting the 19 people and the mechanism and the religion that caused 9/11, they're just letting them off the hook. They were just patsies. They're victims. We should feel sorry for them. And I'm not being facetious. If it turned out that 9/11 was not what 9/11 was, then we owe an enormous apology to Al-Qaeda and to Osama bin Laden. We should apologize to him, should get down on our knees and beg his forgiveness, if he was still with us, for having blamed him for something he didn't do. See, this is what happens. So, there you go. Eli Noor, why is the U.S. allowing Qatar to put an Air Force base in Idaho? Well, that seems a little odd. Okay, so look at the difference between this is how these things get started. Look at the difference between the way the question is answered or asked and the actual data as it at least appears in the first thing. Why is the U.S. allowing Qatar to put an Air Force base in Idaho? If you read that question, the conclusion you come to is that a foreign country is establishing a foreign country's Air Force base on American soil, and that will fly the Qatar flag, and it will be Qatar aircraft and Qatar personnel, and that all of this stuff is going to be a foreign military installation on American soil. I look up Qatar AFB Idaho, and the first thing I see is Records show Governor Little and Senator Risch weren't aware of Qatar facility announcement was coming. Plans had been in the works for years for a Qatari training facility at Mountain Home Air Force Base, but the deal announced Friday was a surprise to those Idaho leaders' staff. So it turns out that Mountain Home Air Force Base is an American Air Force base, and there will be a training school at that Air Force base, but that's not the same thing as saying that Qatar is establishing an Air Force base in America. Now, if you want to have the discussion about whether or not we should be allied with Qatar, that's a legitimate discussion, but this is the kind of thing I'm talking about where people just add so much Tabasco to the story to make it sound like that our government, this is a conservative government, this is the most conservative government we have ever seen or are likely to will ever see, and to say, well, why are we allowing Qatar to put an Air Force base in Idaho? Doesn't that mean that Pete Hegseth is a traitor? Well, Qatar's not putting an Air Force base in Idaho. It's a training facility at an American Air Force base, and it's not the only one. When we do red flag exercises at Nellis, we go through weeks where we have hundreds and hundreds of people from I don't know, 20 different nations bringing their military to American soil. And I could probably structure that to say, why is it that America allows hundreds of foreign fighter jets to fly freely over one of America's cities? You know, you phrase it that way, and it's got a whole different ring to it. I'm not accusing you of anything, Eli. You're a great guy, and I'm really glad to have you here. But can you not see the difference between these two things? I don't. This is what we have to be careful of, and I think it's just the internet. I just think it's just the internet that makes people see things and hear things. And I know for a certain fact, as we all do, that all of these social media platforms rage bait chain us. They tell us one thing and then another thing and then another thing and then another thing, and we get more and more angry because they understand that people will stay online longer if they're angry than they would if they're interested. And that's an interesting observation. But it seems to be a relatively routine, well, it certainly is a relatively routine activity. If you want to have a discussion, as I said, about whether Qatar is an ally we should be aligning with, I am more than happy to have that conversation. Absolutely. But there you go. So that's how that goes. Eric Blake, tonight, the case of the Dominion. Submitted for your approval, Mr. Whittle. Yeah. A former GOP official buys the Dominion voting systems. We all remember Dominion voting systems were the electronic voting machines that worked so perfectly and reliably back during the 2020 election. So Eric says, looks like Elon's shown the way once again, Bill. Like I've been saying, the way to beat them is to take over what they've got. Who knows? Maybe we can get some in-depth analysis of how those machines and how they work. Oh, and by the way, the left is whining about this purchase, raising concerns about, wait for it, potential vote fraud. You know, the thing they all insisted was impossible on these machines. I think the fact that a conservative bought Dominion is the only thing about this that I like is that it does give us a chance to look under the hood and find out from an engineering point of view just how secure these things are. But now let's get to the larger point. Voting machines have to go, and if it turned out that the GOP, the conservative who bought Dominion voting machines, was able to set it up so that we would never lose another election again, and that it would be conservative from here to the horizon, they still have to go, because my principles exceed my politics. They are whether or not they are in fact reliable is not the point anymore. I don't trust them, and if I don't trust the system, then that's not good for the system. I don't care if Dominion voting machines as I said, meant that we never lose another election. They've got to go. I want a fair election. Here's how I would like to order my priorities. I'd like to lose by cheating. Above that, I'd like to win by cheating. And above both of those, by several 100,000 feet, I'd like no cheating. I would rather lose a fair election than cheat to win one. And I have perfectly good reasons for doing that other than personal integrity. I would rather lose honestly than cheat to win, because if you cheat to win, you go right down the same exact rabbit hole that the left has been in with their ring of invisibility and the pop culture and everything else being in favor of them. Ace Effendi says, I suggest we go back to ink and paper ballots, low tech, clear chains of custody, and cameras and supervisors of both parties at every counting station. Amen. And after an election, you should be able to have a physical ballot that you can trace back to an individual, and absolutely do it that way. Absolutely. So, I hope they buy them. Well, they did buy them, apparently. I'm glad that we have a chance to do an in-depth forensic analysis of them. I think that's wonderful. I think it's going to add a lot to the weight of the evidence that they're going to put together for 2020. And then, I think, we just plain turn them into blackjack machines, video poker. I really think that's what we do with them. Paper ballots, and it's funny, we were told that the computerized voting machines were going to speed up the counting process. Well, prior to the 2000 election, I had never seen, there had not been in my living history, or at least my living memory, had there been an election that wasn't called by midnight Eastern time, back when we had to count paper ballots through a counting machine. Just a real simple mechanical counting machine. Once we got the electronic ballots, that's when we found out, we won't know the results of the election for 2 weeks in Arizona, or now we can't finish counting tonight because we're just going to all go home. We've never, we just decided on the night of 2020, we're counting, and we've been waiting for this moment. The election machinery has been preparing for this for 4 years, and it's 11 o'clock at night Eastern time. And you know what? I think we should just all go home and call it a night. Yeah, we're just kind of a little tired of counting. We don't want to be up all night. I mean, gosh, that could go to midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We'll just go home and we'll start counting again tomorrow morning. All you observers can go home, and nothing to see here. So they tried to do that in 2024. I remember we were doing the live election stream, and when Barack Obama made an announcement that we may not know the results of the election tonight, that's when I got a real cold chill run down my spine. But turns out it didn't happen. So there you go. Tom Gerlach says here in California, the counting continues until the right result comes in. Yes, and we learned this in 2000. In the 2000 election, Bush versus Gore, which was a very, very close election. Bush won that by 500 or 600 votes. I've said this before, I'll say it again. We have laws in this country to prevent this kind of thing. And the law on federal elections says this: the winner of the state is determined by the mechanical vote count. If it turns out that the mechanical vote count is within a certain margin, the person, either one of them, can challenge that, and it will go to a second mechanical vote count. And that's it. But when we got to the 2000 election in Florida, they just kept counting and counting and counting, and every day that would go by, oh look, we found a van full of Democratic ballots. How many ballots are there? 300. What percentage are for Gore? 100% of them. In a 50-50 election, well, that's statistically impossible. But you don't want to take away these people's right to vote, huh? You don't want to disenfranchise them. Yeah, chuck them in the sack and keep counting until Gore's ahead of Bush by a couple hundred votes, and then you've reached the answer, and that's when you stop. And liberals today still say that the Supreme Court selected George Bush as president. The Supreme Court said to the Florida Secretary of State, you will have your electors in Washington on this date to deliver their official electoral count. And once they realized that they couldn't keep counting until March, then they finally had to throw in the towel. So, no, we have rules, and we need to follow them. Marusha Dark. Continuing on the topic of voting, I find it hard to imagine we can't come up with anything better than physical paper ballots done in person. You'd think some combination of the engineering minds behind Swiss bank security and the DoD could come up with a digital solution, given that they routinely wire communications and money over the internet on a daily basis. Why can't we use whatever processes and encryption techniques that they use? Because they are determining the encryption techniques, and we have no way of knowing what those encryption techniques are. We have no way of knowing whether they're accurate, let alone whether or not they're biased or intentionally biased. The beautiful thing about a paper ballot is it is so transparent that even a non-intellectual is able to figure out what actually happened. Why we continue to complicate things is because it is easier to manipulate complicated things than it is to manipulate easy things. It may not sound intuitive, but it's absolutely true. The more complex something is, the easier it is to manipulate it. You cannot manipulate the sunrise. It's real simple and real predictable. Elon co-created PayPal, which sends identity details and money over the internet all the time, so there's no shortage of incentive to stop leaks and hacks. You recall this was held up as an example of why it could be trusted with all our social security numbers and other classified information. I think we can do better, a lot better. While we're at it, automate the IRS too. If we're not going to abolish it, it's bad enough they get me my money. I'm not giving them my time. They can tally it themselves with supercomputers and bill me, since they have everyone's bank account information anyway and need to check it for audits. If we're the greatest, richest, most advanced country in the world, let's start acting like it. If we were the smartest country in the world, we would move to the simplest, most transparent, reliable, and verifiable system, and that would be the simplest system possible. If it were possible to get all of the citizens in the country in one enormous place at the same time and say, raise your hand if you vote for this person, raise your hand if you vote for that person, then essentially you'd have no fraud at all, because that's as simple as it gets. This belief in technology as an enforcer for morality is pretty shockingly disproven at this point, I would think. Capital G Geek, breaking. Just found out that the Narco sub was probably destroyed by an AC-130J gunship. Hope that improves your day as much as it did mine. I saw a map that said the Gulf of America is now called the Gulf of Exploding Drug Trafficking Boats. I mean, I'm with you, Capital G Geek. The AC-130 is an astonishing piece of technology, and I've heard people who've been on the scene when the thing it just fires its Gatling gun, and it said area the size of a football field just boils. It's just like the whole field just boils. And I think it's justified to deploy those against drug-running boats, but I don't enjoy it. My hope is that if we do this a few more times, they'll stop sending these bloody boats. See, we're seeing this with the entitlement program and the EBT benefits being about to be cut off, and all of these people getting online saying, well, if they cut off our EBT benefits, we're just going to go in and steal it. We're just going to steal food. We're just going to take it. And this is what happens when you let permissiveness become so rampant for so long that any kind of return to discipline is viewed as tyranny. Marusha seems to be missing the point on purpose. The simplest, most transparent would be a two-factor authorization app on your phone like my bank does. If Elon can make rockets secure, he can figure out digital voting. So let's say that we go to a two-factor authorization app on your phone, and you make a vote, and then the app calls your phone and gives you a code, and you enter the code into the app, and then it is registered as a legitimate vote. But the question is, does the person holding the phone have the right to vote? How many phones do they have? And how many apps do they have? And how many different phone numbers do they have? And how many different registered accounts do they have? You can require voter ID like what many apps do. Well, it was Joseph Stalin who himself said it doesn't matter who votes, it only matters who counts the votes. And if you cannot have a Republican and a Democrat sitting over a table looking down at an individual ballot and arguing about whether this vote is this way or that way, then it will be gamed. It will be gamed. And yeah. And Mazaban says, who's voting for grandma in the nursing home? So, I'm sorry, no. Marusha says, it's already gamed. Yes, Marusha, it's already gamed by things like electronic voting and motor voter registration and all the rest of it. I'm talking about returning it to making it as difficult to game as possible, and that consists of voter registration rules and strict enforcement of the fact that if you're not registered to vote, you don't get to vote, and you cast a paper ballot, and it can go back afterwards, and there's a... Look, you cannot tell the results of an election. Here's the voting system. It's a box, right? If you don't know how many votes go in, you have no way of knowing whether the outcome is accurate. If you know 100 votes go in there and one person gets 40 votes and another person gets 60 votes, you can have a high level of confidence that you are either on the truth or pretty close to the truth. But if one person has 40 votes and the other person has 70 votes and you don't know how many votes went into the box, then you have no way of knowing whether or not that outcome is correct. It's just simple math. And it just seems so self-evident to me. Roadrunner, greetings, friend Bill. During today's show, you mentioned that you were an Apollo kid. If I remember correctly, you were living in Bermuda during the Apollo 11 moon landing. I was living in Bermuda. I watched the moon landing in New York City from the Plaza Hotel penthouse, because my dad was a hotel manager and he was real good friends with the manager of the Plaza. For about 6 months or so before Apollo 11 launched, Gulf Oil filling stations were giving away free Lunar Excursion Module paper model kits. How cool is that? And thank you for calling it the Lunar Excursion Module, the LEM, instead of the Lunar Module, because that's the way God intended that little ship to sound, the Lunar Excursion Module. I walked past one of their filling stations on my way to and from school and ended up getting a bunch of them. I've attached a picture of a completed model, not yours. It took about half a dozen attempts before I was finally successful in assembling one. Were these available when you were where you were? No, they certainly were not. I would have owned those things. I found a complete set of plans on the internet and would be happy to send them to you if you'd like. That's very kind of you. That's actually freaking impressive, dude. Let me see if I can... no, I'm not even going to try to put it on. Yeah, maybe I can. Hang on a second. Hang on. Hang on. This is worth sharing. It's really cool. Much better than I thought. Hang on. Oh, don't be like this. I don't know. It's not taking it. It's on the question thing. Thank you for sending that. That was really, really cool. All right. Yeah, it was really cool. Now, I didn't have the paper Lunar Excursion Module. However, I did have the, who made that? Revell. The Revell Saturn V, which was about 4 feet tall. That was amazing. and I had the Revell Command lunar module that together were about this big, and that was amazing. And the legs folded up, and the ascent stage came off, and the command module separated from the service module, and all of that stuff. So that was really cool. But yeah, and this is another reason why so many people today don't believe the moon landing happened, is because they were told, oh, we landed on the moon. But what they didn't get was they didn't get the chance to grow up for the 5, 6, 7 years prior to the moon landing and watch every little incremental step. You know, today we launched Apollo 2. Yeah, what was it? Just a test of the capsule in orbit. But it was the first launch of the Saturn V or whatever, and 200,000 people were there, and so on and so on and so on. And they just didn't swim in it the way we did. Lloyd Christmas told us that we landed on the moon. I was 13 when we landed on the route, says Roadrunner. I was 10. Just turned 10, I think. Darth Chuck the Merciless says I was 1. Let me see. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, Lloyd Christmas. Yeah. Okay. So I think actually that's it. That is a really cool model. I tried to save it to the desktop and it just didn't work, but it's really impressive. Those are great days. Thank you very much for that. But I did do show and tells at my British school. I was the resident American space guy. Richard says, to end things on a high and unifying note, here's a song mocking Hassan about his dog that we can all laugh to. I love that he just completely crashed out on his audience. Oh my God, John Eden sneaks in with $100 super chat again. John, you are just a stud, and you are the steeliest of steely-eyed missilemen, and I'll never get over being floored by it, dude. Thank you very, very much. Very much, as always. It just deeply appreciate it, and it's really, really, really great. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Thank you, John. I'm going to play this video. It's about 3.5, 4 minutes, and I'm going to play it twice, just in case people want to see it twice. And then right after that video, I'm off the air. So now's a good time to say that this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who keep the lights burning and the wheels turning and all the rest of it. And what I'm about to show you took me about, 7, 8 hours of work, I guess, something like that. And looks like I can't tell you what this would cost. Be interested in hearing people's estimates on what this would cost. And I have it teed up on both players this time, so how about that? So anyway, thank you again for making this possible. I'll run it once. It's not too long. I'll run it again if just in case people want to see it a second time. And Natasha's healing, but to be perfectly honest with you, she's just been in real pain for like 2 months now, and it's just wearing her down, and she's just taking it like a champ. She's just she's just soldiering on, but she hurt herself really badly, and she's getting better by the day, but it's just a slog, and that's all there is to it. So I'm real proud of her. And I have to see one thing here. Chase Smith, 4121, has my most emotionally connecting comment of the night. And Chase writes, model glue is trash now. Yep, I built plastic models long enough to know that in the last 2 or 3 models that I tried to build, and I have built hundreds of 1/72nd scale plastic models, hundreds. The last 2 or 3 that I worked on, had the new glue, the one that didn't get you high. It doesn't get you high, and it doesn't glue plastics together either. It's absolute garbage. It's just plain useless. God, I remember the frustration of that after having had real glue my whole life, and finally, here comes the new glue. And guess what? Glue sniffers won't be able to sniff this. It's like, why don't you go up to the glue sniffers? That Revell red and white tube plastic glue was just freaking great. It actually welded the glue. It was really, really cool. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play these twice, and I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. This took me about a day. I'll say about a day. So I'm gonna shift gears here. Give me 1 second to run to our controls. Going to turn off the mic so that you can hear the audio, and we'll see you guys again on Monday. This is really a Monday thing, but I just like it so much I just couldn't not play it. So hang on, let me bring up my 2 streaming control panels here. All right, ready? All right, here we go. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.